All right, guys. So what we're going to go over in this video is basically how well this Duelist will do. We are going to talk about how OP he is versus cursed monsters or any monster that can give you a debuff. He is going to have a chance to dodge all their debuffs, and he's going to do even more damage and cycle back, hitting them over and over and over and over and over, as well as we're going to talk about all the weapons, the gear, the rings. We're going to talk about skills. We're going to talk about everything. It's an in-depth guide. We're going to also share some clips at the end to show you how insane he is versus just multiple stacks of mobs. And most of this footage is pre-level 30. So you can only imagine what he is going to do at level 30 for me and what he is going to do at level 30 for you. So with that being said, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this content and all this information we're going to spew at you. It's going to be a long video as always, but we're going to condense it as much as we can, and hopefully you will learn and gain something out of this. So see you guys in the video. All right, guys, let's talk about one of the builds that a melee strives to be. Like this guy right here, as you can see, has 58% dodge chance. Now, this is just with our weapons that we have currently, which aren't even level 30 yet, which means we have some room for improvement, as well as our Plague Jacket, which is a very nice jacket, as you can see. Free roll into crit damage. We also have the Plague Mask, the Violent Bleeding Band, and the Amulet of Alacrity. I think I said that wrong, but doesn't matter. As you guys can see, this is our gear that we have on currently, and we are already at 89 reflex. Now, as you can see, we're at 58% dodge chance. The max dodge chance is 65. So let's go ahead and put in the rest of our points to get to 65. As you see right here, with our current build, where we're at right now, with the way that all our skill points are put into place, we only need 110 reflex with our current gear to max out on our dodge chance. That is insane. As you can see, we have 134 stat points that we can still place in other areas. And as you start to get into your tier 1 gear, you're going to be able to get even more damage out of this character. This guy is pretty dang good. I mean, he constantly counterattacks with our current build. And let's actually go ahead and look at his skills. So we go 18 points into Thief. We're going into Fencer's Finesse, as well as Fencer's Finesse 2. That's going to give us 13% more dodge. We're going into Fighting Dirty. So my attacks are going to give a mandatory 2 stacks of poisoned. And honestly, guys, we can probably respec Poison Weapon into something else later on as you get more into a damage-oriented build. You also are going to have Contaminated Wound, which is going to increase the duration of all your poison and bleeds to 5 turns. Pretty strong, not going to lie. On Guard, which is going to help you stack more bleeds, more poisons. Anytime that you dodge an attack, you're going to counterattack. And you're going to do massive amounts of damage. We also go into Hidden Blade, which is going to give our crit hits 75% more damage. So we're starting to hit for roughly around 1,100 damage per hit right now with our Fencer's Blades. We're going into Enduring Invasion, which the reason for this is it's going to give us 3 guaranteed dodges, which is huge damage. Lots and lots of consistent damage over time. We're going to Steal Actions, which is going to give us more poison stacks, more bleed stacks, as well as it's going to allow us to cast Enduring Invasion and Quick Draw in first turn. So this is going to give us 3 free attacks in the first turn, which is going to usually give you anywhere from, I want to say 54 stacks of poison with our current build the way it is on the first turn. That's pretty crazy, pretty good, because you also are speccing into Dagger Throw, which is going to be the Poison Dagger. And that's going to give you a lot of stacks of poison as well. And then Garrote, which is also going to give you a lot of bleed and poison. Now, currently, you don't want to go into Rupture, which would give you 5 stacks of bleeding because it's currently bugged. So what I mean by that is it doesn't apply any poison attacks or stacks currently. Now later on, we may end up taking off the poison weapon and maybe Warrior's Boon and allocating that into something else that'll give us more value. But currently, with the Warrior's Boon, what this does is this allows us to remove all poison stacks that are on our character. Poison stacks, once you get to 30 plus, are going to do a lot of damage to you. So you kind of want to cleanse those as soon as possible. Now, one other cool thing, guys. So we also go into calculated risk in the thief area. And the reason for that is whenever you're hit, if you do get hit, it's going to give you a free chance to dodge no matter what. So it's going to it's a backup plan to save you in case something goes wrong. You know, you do actually get hit once. Now this guarantees that you will not get hit for the next attack. Pretty cool. And that's infinite. That'll last until it's been triggered, until you are attacked again. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right, so now let's talk about why we go into Ranger. So the reason we're going into Ranger is we're going to get us some more resistances as well as another 8% dodge chance. These are huge for, you know, saving your stat points that are going to be going to the reflex. You won't have to worry about those 8%. And that, if you think about it, I think it's every 5 points into reflex is 1 dodge chance, 1% dodge chance. So this is going to save you roughly around 40 points, right? That's pretty big gains. We also are going to go into precision 1 and 2, which is going to give us 13% crit as well as 45% crit damage. It's a lot of extra free damage. We're going into quick hands. This is going to increase this also works on the enemy's turn, by the way. So on our turn, if they attack us, or if we attack, we get 2 hits. And if the enemy attacks on their turn and we counter, we're going to get 2 hits on them. So really cool. So you're going to be doubling the stacks of poison and bleed, as well as quick draw, which is going to give us 3 basic attacks. Now we do rally, because rally is going to give our allies as well as ourselves an additional 2 movement hexes. Really good. Now some people would argue Eagle Eye is good, but I find rally to be pretty on par with what I'm looking for out of this build. You could also go into Tracker's Mark or the Bounty Hunter's Mark, but the reality is this build is not made to kill people, and this is just a little extra damage, whereas this is going to give your team more utility and where they can move. And this character also can be sent off on his own, so he can tank multiple units for a long time. And we'll share some clips of that as well for you guys, so you guys can check that out. And then we spec also into Warrior. Now, the reason this is important is we go into Rage, which is going to give us 15% more health as well as damage. And then we're also going to get an additional 20% damage from Warmonger. So this is why we're hitting for roughly around 1,000 per crit with our non-tier gear. So we're not even in tier 1 gear yet. So we're hitting for about 1,000 per hit, as well as we get dual wield mastery. Now, dual wield mastery is going to give us an additional 8% dodge chance, as well as 8% more crit hit chance and 25% more crit hit damage. I mean, it's very good for this build. This build has a lot of fail safes. You've got the dodge mechanic, which is huge. Very seldom have I died with this character, except versus the Black Dragon currently at level 30. He can put out some nasty damage, and when he does hit, he hits. So that one's pretty crazy. But this character, was able to tank multiple summons from that Black Dragon for the duration of that fight, and basically save the fight. And this is a hardcore character. This is a hardcore account. So just to give you guys a heads up on that. So with this being said, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at what we would consider the best in slot gear. All right, guys, so let's talk about weapons. All right, so weapons are going to only be good for you once they're basically at level 30. That's when you're going to start to realize what's going to be better for you, right? And what kind of stats, what kind of pure damage they're going to give. Now, currently best in slot for me is the Fencer's Gift. And the reason for the Fencer's Gift being best in slot is it's giving very high physical damage. Currently with what we have right now, we're getting 52 and 71 for physical damage, as well as it's giving us reflex points. And these are only level 29. Once we get tier 1, the reflex points are going to go up substantially, which means we're going to have more points that we can allocate elsewhere. And on top of that, it's going to just have higher physical damage, right? And when we get down the line into amulets and necklaces and rings, you're going to see you can actually gain even more damage down the road, depending on how you spec. So let's continue on with the other weapons real quick, and let's talk about the next couple best in slot weapons that we are looking at. Now, the King's Blade is another weapon that is global loot, unfortunately, but it is actually a very strong weapon. Now, this King's Blade is a mythic and it's a global drop. Now, the reason this is good is because it gives you one of each stat. It's going to allow you to have more freedom to place stats elsewhere, which is why the King's Blade is very good if you get your hands on it at level 30. I'm going to enjoy using that one, right? Now, if you look as well, the max base damage on the King's Blade is only 2 under the Fencer. So you're looking at maybe a little bit less damage on the in-game damage, but you're gaining damage with crit as well as might, and you're going into reflex, as well as you're getting free HP. You're getting free mana, which you really don't need a lot of mana on this build, to be fair. Like, we have 8 intelligence on our build, and I never run out of mana, and if I do, it doesn't matter because I can use small mana potions to recuperate, right? Very cool. Very, very cool. So let's go ahead and talk about the next one, which is going to be the Dwarven Hand Axe. Now, this is going to increase your damage by a lot, especially if it does proc. Now, this can proc on both your turn and the enemy's turn, which will give you more damage over time, as well as more poison stacks, as well as more bleed stacks. This is a viable offhand weapon. We aren't using it currently because I am seeing more benefit out of using 2 Fencer's Gifts, but that may change later on down the road. Let's go ahead and move on to the next weapon. With the Twisted Dagger, I'm a fan of it during leveling up. It was good. However, as we're where we are now, eventually I'm going to shift away from all the poison damage stuff. We're going to get rid of our plague mask as well as our plague jackets. And I don't really see the Twisted Dagger working out in our favor for endgame later on. I think that we will be going for more longevity in our fights instead of trying to poison up as much as possible, because as of right now at level 30, I'm only seeing at 100 stacks 3k damage on our enemies at max poison stacks, which is 100, and it's not really worth it to overstack into poison, if you get what I'm saying. So even though this was good for me early on and I could target farm it as I was leveling, it was not worth it at level 30 as much as it is going to be at the lower levels, right? So let's go ahead and look at the next weapon, the Flayer's Blade, which is another really good weapon. If I had access to this, I probably would run this as an offhand instead of running the ring that I'm currently running, which is the Bleeding Band. However, with that being said, this can't be target farmed. It's a global drop. So this is something you'll have to wait for later on whenever it drops. it may be worth using depending on what you get out of it when it drops as a tier 1, a tier 2, and or a tier 3. Now that's, like I said, this is only for later on. This is an honorable mention because bleeding helps everyone that is physical damage dealing on your teams. All right, let's move on to our next weapon. The Kingslayer Mythic. Now this one is something that's really, really good. We have a few of these and they're level 18. Let me show you those real quick, guys. So these are level 18. We got these really early on. We were using these on our Assassin. And I think at level 30, these may outshine our Fencer's Gifts, right? So they start with 9 base damage. The Fencer's Gifts are 11. However, these already at level 18 are giving 19 dexterity to stats, right? Whereas our Fencer's Gift, even though it's higher base damage, is giving only 19 reflex damage. So you can see which one may end up being better down the line. It's most likely going to be the Kingslayers. These Kingslayers are pretty crazy. So I really do like the Kingslayer. I think that this is also a very good weapon that you can use and utilize for this build, especially with the extra stats it's going to give you when you hit tier 1 and or level 30. We don't even have level 31s yet, and I'm looking forward to those. Trust me. We're going to need quite a few of those for a bunch of different builds that we're rocking on the hardcore server or hardcore characters. So another honorable mention right here is going to be the Oculus Stone, as well as the, I can't even say the name right, the Moliner. The Moliner. The Moliner is going to be a nice weapon as well to use if you're going into a lightning build, right? So you can go elemental with these builds, and there are going to be rings and or necklaces that are going to help those builds as well. We're going to talk about those later on in our, when we go over the rings and stuff like that, so that you guys can have a better view of like what is viable and what you can possibly move into as you get to end game at level 30 with all of these different, you know, rings and stuff, rings and necklaces and things like that. However, the Flame, the Moliners, as well as the Oculus are going to give you guys a lot of different options for builds. Now, with that being said, the reason the Moliner is really cool is it gives you a Thunderbolt on strike, right? Thunderbolts do some pretty good damage, especially on a pure lightning damage build. You can do some pretty crazy damage. Our lightning mage hits hard, like 5k plus with his, and he's not even spec'd out to max right now. I can only imagine getting a chance to proc with these, you know, and having dual wielding these would be really insane. Like our damage right here on a level 16, it looks a little low, but you got to look into it like this. You're getting might and vitality, as well as you can add more lightning damage, or you can add more weapons damage, 30 more weapon damage, as well as you can add 55, or it's not 55, it's, I think it's 28% crit damage per weapon. So running 2 of these would give you additional lightning damage, and then you would also get, you know, 30 more weapon damage per, a total of 60, as well as another 28% crit damage per hammer or mace. And you get free procs on Thunderbolts. That would be both on your turn and on the enemy's turn when they're attacking you. And I mean, let's be real, guys, that's a lot of damage over time. You're also going to be stacking lightning damage on them, so you're going to be proccing that lightning damage. It's going to give you even more damage over time. Pretty crazy. I'm not going to lie to you guys, pretty crazy. Now, you could also run the Oculus Stone, which is going to give you reflex, intelligence, which you don't really need, but it's also going to give you might. Now, this is a level 30 variant of this, so you can see that if you're running 2 of these, it would be a ranged weapon. You don't really want to run ranged weapons with this build because you want the enemy to be attacking you to do damage over time, right? So I don't know if I would recommend running pistols or the Oculus Stones, but you could, but you have to make sure you are in melee range. Let's go ahead and hop on over to our weapon examples. So as you guys can see here with these three, we've got the shiny blue crusher, the basher, as well as the smasher. These are going to be very good because they're going to give you elemental damage types. So if you wanted to focus on a certain elemental damage type, or say you wanted to have a chance to freeze your opponents, CC them, your duelist can also deal damage, give them stacks of cold and or lightning and or fire. This is going to give you a lot of different variations into your build. And then not only that, if you wanted to use the Moliner, the other mace, the lightning mace, you could pair that with the cold one or the fire one, and that's going to increase your damage overall, because fire increases damage or reduces damage. Like it gets rid of their damage reduction, right? And lightning gives you crit damage. Cold would give you CC, as well as reduce their movement. So you have a lot of viability out of these builds. The only downside to this is it's global loot, so you can't focus these weapons, which is a huge downside, but it is still viable in my opinion. So let's go on to the next weapon. So next honorable mention is going to be the Thief's Blade. Now you could run one of these to give you a chance to steal shields from enemies as well as their weapon enchants. This could come in pretty handy because when they attack you as well, it's going to give them or give you the ability to steal their buffs. I actually liked this. I was running this for a while until I got two of the Fencer's Gifts, and then I was like, well, the two Fencer's Gifts overall are going to be better for me in my current state of the game. However, a Thief's Blade may be good later on for you guys in game if that's what you're looking at, trying to get free enchants, right? Or if you're trying to strip someone's glory or strip their immortality, this would be another viable option if you don't have a archer to do so, right? It's a 20% chance, but you got a lot of chances with all your hits, right? And with all your retaliation. So keep that in mind if this is another weapon that you could look out for at level 30 or tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. This is a viable weapon to use. I use this while leveling for the majority of level 16 to 30. This was my offhand, and honestly, it did well for me. So hopefully it does well for you guys as well as you're playing throughout your playthroughs, and maybe even at level 30. We'll see how it goes for later on once we pick one up. We're going to update these guides as we get into full tier 1, full tier 2, full tier 3, just to give you guys a heads up so that you see how we're progressing in the long run. All right, guys, so let's talk about best in slot helmet for this build. In my opinion, there are 3 best in slot for this build. There's the Shaco, which is right here. It's mythic. It gives 1 to each base stat. At level 30, I believe this would give you 15 to each. You're also going to get 10% health, 10% mana. Then you're going to get 10% more damage, and then you're going to get 5% damage reduction. Perfect for this type of build, in my opinion. Now, on top of that, guys, if we were to think about it, I think the Bone Jester's Mask is also another viable option. Now, the reason for this is the Bone Jester's Mask gives 15% chance to cast Evasion, and you also get 20% from your skills. Now, if we were to look at the chest piece, it also gives 15. Now, with all 3 of these put together, you're looking at 50% chance when you're hit to proc Evasion, which is a 100% guarantee to mitigate damage, no matter what, right? That's pretty dang good. Now, this, once again, is another viable choice for in-game because you're also going to get the same amount of reflex, which will be at level 30. You're looking at roughly 18 reflex, I believe, when you hit level 30 with this. And then you're going to get quite a bit of stats on the dex, into dex, might, and vitality. So there's a lot of damage and health stats as well. Very strong. Very, very strong. Now, another best in slot that you want to be looking for your helmet is also going to be the Wolf's Head hood. Now, this is a very easy option to target farm because you can be target farming this from 5 different bosses. Now, with that being said, if you're using physical weapons, this is going to increase your damage by quite a bit, like your pure damage. And now, to put in perspective, let me show you guys what we have here on a level 17 item, right? Now this, if you take that 8 damage away from the physical attacks, this would actually be giving plus 24 to physical attacks, and this is only a level 17 item. So I could only imagine what this gives at level 30. At level 30, you're also going to get some pretty top-notch, vitality as well as reflex, and then you can spec more into your dex and might if you need to, because you're going to save quite a bit in that aspect, and you're also going to get more base damage over time. So this is also another viable piece that I would be on the lookout for once you hit level 30. Those 3 items right there, I think, are interchangeable, and you could basically use any of them for end game and make this a very strong build. And you could focus those items as well, because guess what? You could target farm them, right? Very good. Now we're going to go on to the honorable mentions for helmets, which is what I'm currently using right now. Actually, we're using a plague mask and we're using the plague jacket. These are all stuff that I used while leveling up. Very easy to come by. It wasn't target farming. I was just trying to level. But now that I'm level 30, you guys already know what I'm going to be targeting for in game for this build. I think that those 3 are premium. So let's move on to the honorable mentions for this, right? So honorable mentions is the marksman's cap. The marksman's cap can proc on your turn and the enemy's turn, right? So when you're getting hit by the enemy, you have a chance, a 20% chance or 10%. Actually, it's 20% when you get to the purple variant. So, see, let me show you guys. So as you can see here at level 30, it gives a 20% chance to proc when the enemies attack you, as well as on this is on their turn and on your turn. So this is an honorable mention. It is worth using the marksman's cap if you want to have an extra chance to deal damage on your turn and or on your enemy's turn. Totally worth, in my opinion. Now, we also will bring up the plague mask because it has the chance, well, it always applies an extra poison per turn. But poison stacks, they cap out 100. So I'm going to look at moving away from these plague masks. Really good for leveling. Had a lot of fun with it. It's also very strong on the bosses that do reflect damage, because over time it's going to deal more damage to them and you won't kill yourself as fast. Let's go ahead and move on to the chest pieces, guys. All right, guys. So here's what I'm thinking for the top 3 choices for best in slot for this type of build. And it's going to be the Bone Jester jacket, which can be farmed from the Duke, which, as you guys can see, it's exactly the same as the helmet. It gives 15% chance to cast evasion, as well as it gives a ton of stats. And then we're going to look at the Grandmaster's Gi, which is going to have an insanely high amount of reflex, but you're not going to get any other stat. However, it gives 25% more health and 25% more mana. Now, the Grandmaster's is the mythic version of the Gi. Now, this thing is global loot. I had one of these way earlier on when I was level 13. And I mean, let me show you guys the stats on this thing. It's insane. Like, this is 15 reflex at level 13. So I can only imagine what the reflex is going to be at level 30. So this could be a very solid piece of gear. I mean, that 25% max health is no joke, especially when you get to level 30 and you have all these extra points that you can allocate elsewhere, right? And if you have the Shako, that's plus 40% max to your health. And this right here is a very viable in-game piece of gear, right? So I wouldn't sleep on the Grandmaster's Gi. Also, when the Monk class releases later on, this may be something, one of the pieces of armor that may get a buff for that Monk as well, for that whole class, right? So that's going to be kind of cool. Now, let's look at the third best piece of gear. Now, this is also going to tie into, say, the other helmet that we were talking about earlier, which is the Wolf's Head helmet. Now, we've got the Warlord's Mantle, which is also going to give some insane physical damage, as well as you're going to be getting Vitality and Reflex. So you can also target farm this from HOD and Lag and Rag. So this right here is also a very viable piece of gear if you're trying to up your physical damage on your weapons and you're just trying to do massive amounts of damage over time. Now, one thing I didn't mention earlier is that you can also pair up an enchanter with this guy and it'll substantially increase your damage over time. Like, this guy could probably single-handedly destroy whole like five units at a time just because he's doing so much damage, and he's going to be freezing them and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But yeah, these three pieces of gear are going to be best in slot in my opinion. So if this is what you're looking for, like one of these three options, if you want more survivability, it's going to be either the Bone Jester chest or the Gi, or if you're looking for more damage, it's going to be the Warlord's Mantle. So, honorable mentions, guys. We're going to talk about the Grandmaster's Gi, which is a purple variant of it, as well as the Plague Master's Jacket. I used these all the way up until 30. Really good. They give a lot of vitality. They give a lot of reflex. Solid piece of gear. It's definitely worth using until you can find one of those three. Last but not least, we have the Gladiator's Garb. Now, the Gladiator's Garb gives the passive Quick Hands. Now, the problem with this is unlike in our Archer builds, Quick Hands is needed in order to reach, without wasting too many points, is needed in order to reach your Quick Draw. Without that, you can't reach Quick Draw. Now, this Gladiator's Garb can be used on, a pure Ranger, whereas it can't be used on the Duelist unless you're spec'd into pistols, right? Or dual wands. So it's up in the air on if this is worth using or not, for me at least. Now, for you guys, maybe you guys will find a use out of it. But as of right now, I feel like I'm going to get more damage elsewhere. So with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at all the amulets and stuff like that. All right, so guys, with the amulets, here's what we're looking at. So keep in mind, these amulets are going to be based off of what you choose for your build, whatever your weapons are, whatever type of items you're choosing to use. You're going to use these to further augment your damage and or survivability, right? So if you're going for damage, your physical damage, Wolf Charms, Wolf Fangs, depending on if you want more survivability or more pure damage, you're going to go with Wolf Charms for vitality plus physical damage, as well as the Wolf Fang is going to go pure damage all the way, right? So if you're banking that your character is not going to get hit that much, you just go full damage. This is the way to build them, is right here with this. Now, I'm currently using the Amulet of Alacrity. I think I said that right. Alacrity. And that's giving me Dex, which is crit damage and crit rate, as well as reflex. And I'm okay with that. It's also going to give me more movement points. I like that. That's huge for me. Now, you can also go with a Contender's Chain, which is going to be higher vitality and physical damage. This one's actually going to be, I believe, better. Let me see. If it's this one's legendary and the Wolf Charm is rare. So in theory, the Contender's Chain should have higher stats in game than the rare one, right? Because it's a legendary. So keep that in mind when you're farming these items. Another item that you could get if you wanted to just go pure damage without more physical. If you just want to go pure damage, you can go into an Amulet of Power, which can be farmed from the Forge Master. And then you could also go for the Chain of the Abyss if you want to lose 15% health. The Chain of Abyss is going to give you 15% more damage and a lot of pure damage from Might. But if you're dual welding, I'm sure the other amulets are going to be better because it's going to give you pure damage to each of those weapons, right? That's solid, right? And I think overall that's going to be way better. Now, remember how we mentioned that if you're using, say, those maces that give a certain type of damage, that's when you're going to start speccing into these mythic amulets. And these mythic amulets are going to give you a ton of different stats. They're going to give you armor. They're going to give you health, return on health, extra damage dealt. We'll show you a bunch of them right now, actually, so you can get a good look at what these amulets are going to be looking like for you in the game. Now, these overall, in my opinion, are going to give you some more bang for your buck because these aren't even level 30, but let me see if I can find a level 31. So this is a level 30 amulet, right? It's going to give you 10 to vitality, and then you can actually respec the prefix for this, right? To crit damage, life steal, whatever you need. But overall, this is going to give you 10 vitality, and then 58 of the damage stat at level 30, right? So that's 58 per weapon. So if I'm rocking, hatchets or something that are giving me pure shadow damage, this would give me whatever those hatchets give, or whatever those daggers, whatever else give, plus 58, right? To each of those weapons. That's a lot of damage over time. So, I mean, you can do this with fire, you can do it with lightning, and you can do it with cold. There's one for each variant. Now, you got the Contender's Chain. We don't have these maxed out, but once again, Contender's Chain is going to be vitality and it's going to be physical. And then same thing with the Wolf Fang. As you can see, the Contender's Chain is lower level and it's already giving the same amount as the Wolf Fang, right? So it's going to give higher stats overall. So kind of cool. And then you also have the Alacrity, which we already have a higher level one. We didn't put this one on. Oops. I thought I did. But so you have the Alacrity as well, which at level 30 should get 10 of each, I believe, or it may stay 9 and 9. At the end of the day, it's either one more stat that you free up or one less stat you have to put in, right? So pretty cool. So there are all the amulets. Let's go over the rings. So when we talk about rings, best in slot, if you're going for a bleed build, or if you're going for a damage build, I think might be the bleed. And the reason for the bleed is because it's going to increase your damage over time, right? And we average about 30 to 40 plus bleed stacks. That's the average that it'll get to in a long fight, right? So that's a lot. That's like 150% more damage, physical damage over time. That's quite a bit of extra damage. This, in my opinion, will be best in slot. It drops from priestesses, and priestesses will be in these areas that you see highlighted. And that way, if you are looking for one of these at level 30 or you're trying to target farm it, these are the areas you're going to target farm it at. Right? And then we have honorable mentions. You've got Binding of Abyss, Band of Kings, but this is a global loot item. This one may actually be better because of all the different stats you're getting overall by level 30. This would be probably best in slot. It's also a mythic, so it's going to give a ton of stats, like a ton, right? The other honorable mentions are going to be your Emberstone Ring, Hailstone, your Ring of Power. These are all as we said before, Ring of Power is just pure might. The Emberstone is going to be might and fire damage. Hailstone is going to be intelligence and cold. You don't really need intelligence in this build, so it's kind of a off build if you're running the Hailstone ring. I don't recommend cold in this build. I would probably run maybe, it depends, guys. Realistically, I think you could do better with something else over the cold, but it's up to your imagination and what you're planning on doing with it. Now you also have the Thunderstone ring, which is going to be primarily Dex, and it drops from Ragnar and the Green Dragon. Also, this is for if you were to go into lightning weapons, right? You would probably use this over the bleed, because bleed doesn't help you at all. Now, with that said, guys, we are going to go into the clips. I'm going to show you how well this guy does versus cursed monsters, how well he tanks multiple monsters. I mean, this guy is basically a legend. This build is, in my opinion, one of the best in-slot builds. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video and all this information that we've shared with you. Hopefully you learned something from this. So we'll see you guys in game, and hopefully you enjoy. Oh, we stole his fire enchant. Oh man, insane. Yeah, that's pretty crazy, right? All right, so this originally started out as two bosses. The Twisted Soul.
Oh, we can't strip his what you call it?
And
That
the Black
could be
Dragon.
bad.
Now the Black Dragon has consumption. What I'm saying is we can't strip that extra damage he's going to get. So he's going to get 40% more damage. Now he also summons allies. So you're going to see how good the Duelist is. And how long he's going to actually last for. It's just long enough to help us win. Now this is pre-30. We're all level 29 still. As you can see, he's spawning in his little dudes. I'm nervous. So we're chewing on stuff, aka my fingers. Because once again, we're doing hardcore, so this is scary. You're gonna see this guy does a lot of damage, and he does it real fast. So we noticed that we were max stacks on the Black Dragon, so we're focusing on poisoning his add-ons, right? Because it's just wasted damage. And if we could possibly, the longevity of the fight, kill off his minions while killing him, it's going to benefit us a lot. But as you can see, he's doing consumption. He's got plus 40% damage right now. He's lowering all our health as well. Really scary fight. Now we're going to move our paladin to the other side of the dragon to hopefully have all the ads focus our duelist. I'm super nervous. You guys will see as soon as he starts hitting. Because the dragon's double hit. We're stunning the ads. Oh no. Alright, not a big deal. Huh. A warlock does really good damage, guys. And the paladin is very good too. At least the builds that we have. That's what we call them. Look at that damage. You can see our duelist is tanking all the damage from the add-ons. And right now we're banking on our 2 damage dealers, which is our Warlock and our Paladin, to hopefully win this fight. No, I messed up. Oh, shit. He misplayed there. He's still holding strong. I think we lose this. Now, I believe Shield of Retribution currently is bugged because it applies shield based off of the caster's might plus his weapon damage plus the target's might and weapon damage, therefore doubling the shield's values compared to what you actually see. It's giving you multiple stacks of like damage and stuff. See, the Duelist lasted for a long time with all those different mobs on him. $23K left. Insane. So we pop a Bottled Wrath, which when he pops our shield is going to blow up like it did.
Wow, Bottled Wrath for the win.
For massive amounts of damage.
Oh, man.
As you guys can see, 118K. So crazy. And we got our first tier 1 weapon, which is actually going to hit hard on our Warlock. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. This was a fun video to make. Took a lot of time to put together. So if you liked it,
Wow, that was a lot of damage.
make sure to
Ooh, look at that.
hit that like and subscribe. Now we'll see you guys in the next one.
Interesting.